Okay, good morning from Maryland. What we're gonna do today, I hope everybody's well and everything's good. What we want to do today is we're gonna talk about how we develop the work that we do on these books. And it's kind of a interesting process. It starts usually with like some type of word, a single word or multiple words. It could be even related to some event or other observation or something that happens in just daily life. We have a lot of uh, natural uh, environment here, and you see different animals behave different ways. You see people say certain words, and you think to yourself, well, that's interesting, and you jot it down. Sometimes it becomes something, sometimes it don't. So, but anyway, there's been a few questions about it, and so I thought, well, since we're working on Jemima Jope and we've got Jemima Jope is next to be released, it was a good one. It went well, the whole process for that. It took a while, but it went well. So I think I thought, well, we'll just go take that one and we'll kind of step through it a little bit. So without further delay, we'll go ahead and do that. So be sure to hang around and if you're interested. The way the way this particular one happened, just by a quick review, is I was driving through one of the cities here, actually small town, and there's a restaurant and it has an open sign, but the end's burned out and it says "Ope." And so that was basically the gist of the word. I thought, well, I'll have a character, Opie or something. I thought that'd be good. So that's how I wound up uh, beginning. Well, that didn't pan out. It didn't work out that way. Didn't have Opie. Had wound up with Jemima and Zope and Tiva and whatnot. So it's kind of funny the what you think is going to happen, but the word stuck, and so then you start okay. Well, we as a um, um, children's books author type thing have to you want to try to relate to something that children will um, enjoy. And so I guess the difficult part of that is, and the way it was explained to me by one of my people I work with, an engineer, fellow engineers, like Jimmy, you got to think like a child. And so, sometimes that's why things are a little bit silly and whatnot. But you think about the word, you think about the audience that you have, you think about the scenes, and then the sketches. And so we're going to step through all of that kind of quickly this morning. And like I say, if you're interested, just hang around and maybe you might pick up something. Maybe you might just say, well, that's my daughter tells me some of these stories are corny, so you might think that too, and that's okay. We're adults, but try to look at it from a child's point of view. Okay, so. Yeah. So, just real quick, there's a word, Yishkeni. It's this. We decided we were working on Rosie, and we were setting up the web hosting site and all that, and we're looking for uh, uh, all of these terms are kind of new to me, but a handle and all that type of thing, and Yishkeni came to mind as because basically that's what it's the divine kiss is how that translates out of Hebrew, and I guess the thing is that's what you want, and so we want to be gentle in our approach with the stories. We try to not put in scenes that have a lot of violence or dark subjects, and so that's why there's lots of flowers in the books. There's lots of sunshine, rainbows, and things like that. So they're supposed to be fun books. All of that. That can be later in life. For people. So anyway, like I say, hang around. Everything, like I mentioned earlier, starts out with a single word. And a single word is it can be anything. It can be it or at or something simple that you can make basically three-letter words out of. Now, in this particular case, it's already a three-letter word, so you'd have to make four-letter words. But that's how we wound up with cope and mope and soap and tote and rope and all these different rhyming words. And basically you just step through the alphabet. Start out at the beginning. First letter that actually makes a word is C, some cope. So for me, it's kind of interesting. I don't I think about what I want the story to be, but then as I research the words, I get more ideas. Oh, this person, I knew from the beginning that I wanted to write a book about loss and the seven stages of grief and all of that because my grandchildren had experienced a loss and so they were having a little bit of difficulty dealing with that, why this happens and all that kind of thing. So the word cope, I'm like, okay, that fits, and then the next thing you know, you're going down the list and mope comes up and so it's like, okay, these are all words that kind of fit with the story. And so it just worked out that way. Doesn't necessarily always happen that way though, and so um, in the I I must tell on myself when I was doing all this initially, and I get down to the J letter, Jope. I'm like, well, that's not a word. Well, it turns out it is. It's a surname, if you will, and so and it's surname for Job. And I thought, well, there's the link, right? I mean, your Job was he had a lot to deal with, and so, how he dealt with that is another study, and we got some other material that we're posting related to that, so that you can follow that if you're interested. But yeah, and then you're sitting there and you go, well, the main character, one of Job's daughters was named Jemima. And so, and this is how it kind of sort of just comes together, and Jemima, I did not know this, it translates to dove. And we use a dove in a lot of our stories, especially symbolic of the spirit and stuff. And so it was just it's amazing how uh, Jemima she came to be. Now because of the type of character that she is, well, you know we thought, well, she needs to be a free spirit. Well, the children of the 60s and 70s, the embodiment of, if you will, or the testimony of free spirited and free spiritedness. And so that's a tongue twister there for sure. Anyway, so that's how it starts out. So I'm gonna step through a little bit of this for you. That's how the word research goes. Hang around. From this, it gets better as it goes. So, like I say, we picked out ope, and that's somehow revealed to you, to the person, to me, and like I say, it happens in daily observation. It happens, somebody says something. My subconscious, presents ideas to me because I get to thinking about, a book or a subject, and then, things just happen, and I can't really explain it. But that it's realized at that point, it's the words revealed, the theme is revealed, and then like for Be Free, that was one of our previous works. Diversity and hard work are basically the theme there. The flower and the bee are really diverse. The flowers, I mean, they're working at making blossoms and making seeds and reproducing, and bees are working at gathering pollen and making nectar and making or gathering, drinking nectar and making honey. So, you know, it's uh, it's just interesting, the idea. That doesn't mean that's what your book. If you were writing a book, that doesn't mean that's what the path you would need to follow. And I'm sure someone else has probably already had the same idea and written the same book. I'm just not aware of it, you know. But and there's maybe somebody out there who's had that idea and wants to write a book. And so I thought, well, it might be a good idea to kind of step through some of what happens to me because I've learned a lot in this process. I think I'm up to like 7 or 8 books now, and they're all published, which is kind of wow event for me. Never would have thought that that could be something that would happen. So, like I say, usually these are based on some type of real life event, some type of experience, or some observation. But that I wouldn't limit it to that. I'm just telling you this is what happens to me. And then, like I said previously, you pick, 3, 4 letter, five, sometimes 5 letter words. If sometimes I run into spots, in the poetry, if you will. They're rhymes and not much poetry to them, but sometimes I run into spots where, like, okay, I need a word. I need something that's going to rhyme with this, but the 3, 4, and 5 letter words I have, they just don't. They don't do it. So I got to find a different word, and sometimes it takes a word that's 8 or more characters, and that's probably something that's way above your child. But as they get older, it might make more sense to them. Hopefully, it'll make sense to the parent or the person reading the book or reading with the child. And so, like I say, on occasion I have to select, more than that. So you just have to be open to that. You got to be flexible. You can't be like rigid. You can't be hard. Like it's like I'm not going to do this way or that way or whatever. You gotta, you don't want to go with the flow. You don't want to just do whatever, right? But at the same time, a little bit of flexibility is probably a good thing. And like I said before, usually once I make it through the word list. I mean, like I'm working on MEM, living waters right now, and there's a lot of names in there. There's Kim and Tim and Slim, and even Jim. Jim is short for Jimmy, but it's also Jim is short for Jemima. Jem, and so the thing is Jemima's going to make a reappearance in that book. She's going to travel to a location. We haven't decided, but it'll be one of the states close to California, or maybe even over here on the East Coast, to do some work to help people affected by some type of event or something. But that's where that book is at now. But usually, that's with Ope. There weren't a whole lot of character names available for that, but Zope was a good character name for the dog and whatnot, and so yeah, it varies from time to time and place to place, but like I say with Mem and a word with the rhyming em word. There's a lot of names available, Slim and like I say, Jim and so on and so forth. So that's kind of a word selection overview. I'm sure there probably could have been, I could have said more, but this is kind of just a beginner type thing, and so just something for somebody to think about. So if you like what you're hearing, hang around. So in this particular book, you got to consider the audience, right? And the audience is children. But I mean, there might be an adult or two that might benefit from this. I don't know, but I always told my kids growing up, and they probably didn't appreciate this advice too much. No one really does. They're more probably interested in what's happened to them. But I'm like, look, you need to think about what, not so much what happened to you, but how you're reacting to what happens. That's the important thing, because the what happened to you is one thing, and it's common. That's an experience. We're all human, so same or similar type events happen to everyone. But the reactions, well, that's my thing in life, are just totally different. Even ones that are close to the same. And um, I use this in Jemima Job. I'm thinking, well, you know, Jemima's had some events and she's recovering from it and she's burying the hatchet and she's getting a new friend, a puppy, and she's new beginning and all that. And so she's coming out of the whatever it was she was in, and so the same thing happens to Zope. I mean, he mopes around and he whatever, he's having a hard time coping, and so just because Tiva won't come out and play, I mean, it's like, but fill in the blank. I mean, Tiva wouldn't come out and X or blank or whatever, whatever their situation is that Tiva won't do, and it could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be an event, it could be something you've been hoping for, it could be any number of things that you experience loss with. So the theme of the book is to just kind of sort of present, this lost concept of, things happening in life, but and then show how the characters react to it. They react to it in a positive way, as opposed to a negative way, in a constructive way. And that doesn't mean that, um, sometimes negative reactions aren't but are positive in a strange sort of way. But that was basically, when you're dealing with children, you want to try to stay positive. So if you like that idea and you want to know more, hang around. So, okay, so we've made it through the word selection, and now we're kind of you gotta summarize what the story's about, what it is you're, and I get you know constructive criticism all the time, I suppose. Jimmy, you're too wordy, you say too much, so it's like, okay, well, it's me, it's who I am. I just want to make sure that somehow it gets communicated, but anything that can go wrong in a project, in a book project, it don't really matter what it is. You want to build a house, you want to go somewhere, travel, whatever. Anything that will probably go wrong, gonna go wrong in the planning phase when you're laying everything out. And so we do lots of planning. Before a book ever, a manuscript ever even gets on the list to be worked, there's hours and hours and hours of thought and okay, working your way through the word list, right? I mean, that can um, you know that can take a while. I mean, just putting all that down. It's not so much finding, you get the words, you get a list of words. Well, what do they mean? I mean, the words have meaning, and so, some words are acronyms and other words, I mean, the acronyms aren't really words, I suppose, but you get the general idea. You got to, sometimes you have a thought about what you think a word means, and it can mean a whole lot of other things. And so just a simple word like blow. Or you think the wind blows. Well, there's all kinds of other, you know, meanings for the word. You blew an opportunity, or some kind of thing like that. So, yeah, it's you want to make sure that you're choosing the word in the right context of what it means, and so then you got to put down the story, and so you write the story, you come up with it, and I just do whatever comes to mind. Sometimes I write the end of the story, the middle of the story. Usually the first of the story, the beginning of the story is something to do with the Creator, Father God, and that kind of thing. But I jump around, and so I just write down what comes to my mind for a particular point in the story when I think of it, and I can go back later and fix it. Yeah, if it can be fixed. Sometimes, sentences or storylines just they wind up on the scrap heap. They just strike through, gone. You got to come up with something different. But in general, I just put down whatever thought comes to mind, and the order that it comes to mind may not be the actual order of the story. But then I can move things around later, and like I say, it's hard to describe. I'm working on the one called The Race, and some of the words that come to me are not. I've never even heard these words before. I didn't even know, and I would go and look them up. And I go, oh, that's an actual place. That's so. But anyway, eventually you get a draft. You get something, that's a draft. And like I say, sometimes a draft just goes into a folder. Um, we got stuff that's been sitting in folders for a year, 2 years, because we just haven't got back around to working on it. But at least you captured your thoughts of what you were thinking at the time. That doesn't mean that, other events might have occurred and other things could have happened. Um, you know, uh, you find a way to incorporate that into the story. If it's some, and then some of the things that you thought about initially, you thought, well, that's pretty, that's lame, or I don't like that anymore, or, so it takes additional editing. But eventually, out of all of this, will come a summary. And a summary is basically what you're going to see on the back of the book. I just put the one in here that was from Jemima Jope, because that's what we're working on now. It's going to be released. It's in final, print format right now. It's close to release, and it's good. I think it's going to be a good one. So anyway, there's maybe some steps here that I didn't think of, but I don't want to just go on and on forever. So anyway, if you like what you're hearing, hang around. So, uh, scenes. Okay, the scenes are to me, I mean, next to actually holding the scene creation is one of the most exciting aspects of all of this. All the planning and all the words and the creation and the story and all that. It's work and it's fun. There's nothing. I'm not taking anything away from that either. You get your creative juices, as they call them. You get them, flowing or whatever, and you never know what's going to come out of that. But once you have, words, and I'm going to just pick this one, this particular line. There's a couple lines here associated with this, but um, it had the word "oh," which is a Midwestern word for surprise. Kind of a oh, a thing or something. So I don't know, but I didn't know that either. But so you imagine Zope's surprise when Tiva began to tote, and then you can see, oh, okay, that's she's toting her kittens. And so I knew this when I wrote the line. I'm like, okay, what can she be toting? She's restricted access. She don't come out and play anymore. And Tiva needs some time. She needs some time to herself. She needs to be alone. I mean, she's gonna be a mama, right? So yeah, I mean, but Zope don't understand that. He just wants to play rope. So, but anyway, so the first scene you're gonna see is kind of it's just a black and white drawing. It's hard to see what you see here in that scene. But if you like what you're hearing so far, hang around. Okay, so Zope never gave up. He called every day, and one day heard, "Yo, oh." Imagine Zope's surprise when Tiva began to tote. Okay, so you developed a narrative. Okay, you developed the story line, manuscript, if you will. And, this particular scene is scene 11 in the book. It's a full page scene. And it just worked out that we picked the, scene 11 when we were writing the narrative and the manuscript, going, okay, scene 11 would be good for the cover. And so, but it doesn't always work out like that. Just to let you know, you have to, like I say, you have to be a little flexible. Sometimes we pick out scenes and say this would be a good cover scene, and then no, there's a better scene that's a better cover, and that actually happened with Be Free. So the wife and daughter, they're like, oh, this scene with the bees, and pollinating the flowers and all that kind of stuff, and the key and all that. That's a better scene than this other scene that we'd picked. And I like, you're right. It is a better scene. So we made some changes. But yeah, in this particular case, it worked out where this was good. But so here's kind of a breakdown. You got to be telling the illustrator, okay, there's a crawl space under the porch. Zope's at the crawl space, calling to Tiva. Show the word yoke coming from under the porch because um, you don't really know if it's Tiva that's under the porch or if it's one of the other characters that you've seen earlier in the book, one of her protectors. But it's okay, you know. And so then, and then, Zope with his thought bubble, Ope, and then you showed Tiva carrying a kitten with others following her, and then show the kittens playing with a rope with a piece of yarn, and then show, floating hearts all around the scene because we attempt to put hearts in every book somewhere, and that's just a heart covenant thing. Jesus write his instructions on your heart, and your cold, stony heart will be a better heart and all that. And so we attempt to put those kind of heart symbols in the story. And this was the scene for that because there's just obviously there's a lot of love going on in this scene. So, but when you're working to communicate an illustration, uh, it's my bad. My publicist keeps me in good order because I'm always trying to get the characters to do more than one thing at a time, and just because that's the way I think. I'm thinking scene's in motion, but it's not. It's a flat scene. It's two-dimensional. It's a snapshot of a point in time, and you have to, communicate that. Different characters can be doing different things in the scene, but you can't have the same character doing multiple things. And so that gets a little, for other people, that's probably not a problem at all. That probably makes perfect sense. They probably understand that. And, and that would be easy for them, but it's a struggle for me sometimes. So anyway, that's kind of how this goes. And so the next slide, if you hang around, you're actually going to get to see a scene. Okay. So this is what we're talking about. It's all black and white, no color. It's just kind of like, oh man, but you get to see. To me, uh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. You get the, there's different styles of illustration, and so you get to figure that out what you want it to look like. I always like this one. This this basically the same one for all the books. But you can vary it, I suppose, if you choose to, based on your preferences. But there's no color here. But you get the general idea, and it's really to me when I get these illustrations for the first time, it's these words. They're actually, up until then, now at this point in time, they've just there's just words on a piece of paper, and there's not really any action. I mean, there's what you're telling the illustrators portraying action, and there's some action in the scenes themselves, but it's nothing like an actual illustration. And so you get to see it like this for the first time. And we really basically this scene didn't. I mean, as we went along, we made some modifications. We didn't really delete anything, but that is something that happens sometimes. You put an attribute or something in a scene, and then later on you go, no, it's not working. It needs to be different. You need to modify it, or you just need to get rid of it because it's just not not a good place for it, and it would be impossible for me to describe that to you. You just have to. It's your book, it's your writing. You know what you think it should look like. So um, for me, it's uh, I think that it should. For instance, say like when we were doing JG and he's rescuing the family from the burning building and everything. Man, I thought that was a perfect scene. 3-year-old, she comes down here, she looks, oh, why is the girl crying? That upset her. I'm like, well, might want to rethink that, so I had to change the scene so that it wasn't so she's got empathy obviously for characters on the page, which, to me it would make sense as an adult that child would be crying, but as a child it concerned her, and I'm like, well, we can fix that. And so it's it's good to look at things from different perspectives and be willing to change and be willing to, do something different, and so that's the thing about this book. We're talking about a sensitive subject, loss, and so we're trying to talk about it in a helpful way. You know, Tiva having babies and coming being unavailable for a while is a loss event, which has a happy ending, really. And so that's why it got this is what was chosen. But yeah, this is the first look at that. So if you like what you're seeing, hang around. There's more to come. Color. So yeah, and so what we did, we added a porch swing because there was no porch swing in the previous slide illustration, and we thought, well, porch is kind of empty looking, and we thought about, okay, we could put Jemima sitting in the porch swing watching all this, but no, actually this is more of a Zope and Tiva moment. We don't need Jemima kind of being there on that, so we didn't do it. But if it was your book and you thought it might make it more complete, then you might want to do something like that. Similar to that, you might want to say, add another character here or whatever. Um, the only other thing that we wound up doing with this, and I mean, the scene was actually really, really good. Little 3-year-old granddaughter, when she's over, she uh she picks up that two kittens playing with the ball of yarn, and so I got a ball of yarn here that sits in my menagerie, that's part of the presentation and everything. And when you're thinking about it, I mean, this is it. This is the idea. I mean, it's like I say, you take real life experiences and things of that nature, and you work a story into them. And Zope and Tiva, they play tug of rope. They play with an actual rope, and all that kind of stuff. But Tiva's, she's pregnant at the time, or with, kittens at the time, and they're playing and everything. And so these kittens, I mean, they're experiencing that tug of rope game, not physically, but spiritually, And so they come out, they're ready to play tug of rope. So, it goes back to be careful what you watch. Be careful what you listen to. You're a mother to be. You want to think about that. And so, so that's kind of like one of the hidden clues in the book, and we talked some about that in the presentation. But but color, boy, like I say, the next best part of this to me is when you wind up with the finished product. So if you like what you're seeing, hang around. There's more to come. Not much. We're almost done. So we added butterflies and we added a plant. Okay, so you got to fine tune thing. And so, we picked, 4 butterflies and we put them in 4 corners. So I mean, you could have more. You have whatever. It's your book. You can have whatever you want to have. In here, we thought about, a plant, because most porches are kind of nook-like places where you go. I mean, I could imagine Jemima sitting out here on the porch of her home, you know, on an afternoon or early morning, either having coffee, oop, coffee, for all you coffee drinkers. Happy, happy. Okay, so coffee or drinking, tea in the afternoon, or a spot of tea or something. But yeah, a plant seemed like it was appropriate, so we put a plant in there. But this is basically the scene. It's pretty much finished, this was an easy one. Okay, let me just put it that way. Some illustrations, multiple comments are made, and multiple iterations to get them in a good format. But I just wanted, as part of an overview, just give you a kind of a look at this. This is what it takes. So, and so if you like what you're seeing, hang around. Got a couple more slides here. We'll be done. So, just by way of review, we have the planning phases completed. That usually takes a couple, 2 or 3 months. I mean, and so if you think that a book just happens, like in a week, no, that's you should modify your thought process. Now, I'm not saying that it possibly couldn't happen in a week for some people. They're very, but for me, no. And so I think about what I want. When I'm working in the planning phase, like right now, we're working on a book about grace. Where I'm collaborating with my daughter, and it's going to be a good one, I think. But you got to think, okay, well, I'm writing down these words and these scenes, and what's it going to look like when I get finished? What do I think I want it to look like when I get finished? And that is all part of the planning phase, and usually sometimes it takes weeks, especially when you get to a sticky part in the story about, some event or something, because you don't want to mislead anybody. You don't want to make someone think, oh, this is your answer. This is your problem is solved. Well, usually, it's more complicated than that, especially with a subject like grace. I mean, grace is like, wow. Uh, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Greatest 6 words in the English language for me, anyway. And so then you get the the rewards and the summary. That takes time. I'm not saying it would take 3 months to do that, but those requirements to me are it takes a while. Especially I mean, just as a minimum, the best of put the words down, figure out what the meaning is, write a story and a summary a month. And so usually, life happens, right? There's other things going on, like you got to cut the grass, or it's somebody's wedding, or you got vacation planned, or I mean, there's all kinds of other things that get in the way of. It's not as though you just sit down and go, okay, this is a requirement, and it happens. So yeah, give yourself some time for that part, because the planning and the requirement are usually that's the best points in time to fix mistakes, that you're going to see that are going to pop up as you go along. And then design, you get the preliminary initial concept, and then after that you start getting into some real details. The preliminaries, like the sketches that are just black and white, and then the details are color, adding things to, modifying, delete, and then you gotta get it in print mode, get it in a state that's ready for print. Well, you gotta make sure you got the right numbers on it, and gotta make sure that it's in the right format, and then there's a release process that goes with that. Release, fortunate for me, CFP takes care of most of, or whoever it is I'm working with takes care of most of the release aspects of things. But after that, it's your baby to go out and you talk about it, and market it and that kind of thing. There's programs available for that. You can have someone else do it, but if you want to step out there and go at it yourself, well, it's a good experience. You got to be willing to talk to people. You got to be willing to give out business cards or free sample. We use bookmarks. We give out a lot of bookmarks as just information, and people are always willing to strike up a conversation. But this is the way this particular one, this is the way the words wound up being illustrated in the book, which is really nice. And then you pair that with the scene, and you got something. Now you got something that you can sit down, and then uh, after all of this is done, and like I say, this takes a couple, 2 or 3 quarters, maybe a year or so, just to get it where you can hold it. But to me, that's the second best experience. Like I said, the first one is, seeing those illustrations for the first time, and just in black and white, is wonderful for me. But actually hold a printed copy in your hand, something that exists in this world, in the physical world, that really didn't exist before, probably existed in the spiritual world for all of eternity. But it takes someone like you, it takes someone like me, or someone else or something to make those things come into being, and in the physical world. So if you got the talent, you got the time, you should pursue it. If you like what you see, and hang around. There she is, the final version. What can you say? Looks great to me. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this kind of little discussion. We'll probably have another one or so of these with other books, but thought it was a good time to kind of create something like this and talk about it with people. And like I say, if you like what you're seeing and you're enjoying it, then hit the subscribe button or whatever it is. Do whatever. If you don't like it and you didn't find this to be of interest or a benefit, well, hey, nice talking to you. Sorry to waste your time. But have fun if you enjoyed this, and you got any other questions, don't hesitate to you know send us an email or something. So this is how you can get a hold of us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is we have a Yishkeni web hosting site that you can go to, where our books are. We got Facebook, we got mail. You can send me mail, send it to PO box or whatever. You can call the number on the screen there too. So, if like I say, keep it positive. Because if we're just going to ignore mail that's negative. I mean, that's not good. So, don't have time for it. I know that there's a lot of people that's the way they are, and hopefully they can change over time and become more positive. So anyway, thank you for your time today. Thank you for spending time with me, yours truly, and I love spending time with you. And trust me, I wouldn't do this if I didn't think that perhaps maybe someone somewhere would get some benefit from it. If we reach one person or just a couple of people, it's all been worthwhile to us. So anyway, hope you have a great rest of your day or night or evening or whatever, and we'll see you later. We will be releasing the Jemima Jope um, video PowerPoint pretty soon. So I know this, if you're watching this out of at some future time, a couple years from now, or whatever. But it should be in our library on YouTube, so you can just go ahead and select it and watch it and see if it's a book that's right for you and your family. Anyway, take care and love y'all. Appreciate it. Talk to you later. Bye.